Jan.
Yes?
Hi, it's John Elliott here.
Hello.
The session starts at 2, doesn't it?
Yes.
It does. No, I'm in the car. It's just the traffic's pretty bloody awful. I'll get there.
Yeah, fine. Okay.
There's always a bit of excitement and a little bit of nervousness about the very first time you open the score and with the musicians there present, because from the very nature of the organisation of the English Baroque soloists and the Monteverdi choir, one's dealing with freelance musicians. The permutations of them are endless, but they're never quite the same group as you worked with a few weeks ago. So here am I walking into the studio and meeting a group of singers who hadn't worked with me the last 2 weeks, hadn't worked with me for some while, many of them, plus 4 soloists who don't know each other, an American soprano, an Italian mezzo, an English, half German tenor who lives in New York, and a German bass who lives in London. That's a sort of cosmopolitan complexity of our outfit. They've been sent the music in advance, so even though they make a few mistakes early on, my job is to ensure, first of all, that they're playing the notes and singing the notes in the right order and accurately, but very quickly, I'm really like a hound trying to get onto the question of the truffle, to find the truffle, and to me the truffle is what is the essential emotion and expression that we're trying to convey.
Okay, and
Christen, diesen Tag, in Metall und Marmorsteine, in Metall und Marmorsteine.
Somewhere I read, and I don't know where it was, a Lebenslauf and a curriculum vitae saying that I was due to record all the Bach cantatas for Deutsche Grammophon. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I've been doing 1 record a year for the last 4 years. I thought, my goodness, if with 200 cantatas to go, that means I'll have to live till about 150, and then I probably wouldn't complete it. And then it occurred to me, well, 250th anniversary of Bach's death falls in the year 2000. Is that just an accident of history, a quirk of history, or is there something significant about it? And then you look at Bach's music and you think, well, there's the Heimelmesse, the B minor Mass, there's the Weihnachtsoratorium, and there are the Passions and so on. I'm sure in 2000 they'll get performed everywhere, all around the world. But what about the real heart of his music, the cantatas? I've had this really rather strange and probably crazy idea of trying to perform all of them within a single year, on the appropriate Sunday for which they were composed and intended, and the feast day in the church year.
Okay. Good. Stop.
The cantata Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag, number 63, is exceptional in Bach's output in every sense. First of all, it's a very, very unusual piece in that it has no sermonizing. He's not preaching in this cantata. It's entirely a festive piece celebrating the birth of Christ. It has moments of reflection, but it's not based on the gospel story as such. You don't hear the Matthäus or Lucas description of the birth of Christ. It's referred to obliquely.
Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag.
You've got to be nimble on Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag. 1, 2, 3, 1.
Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag.
Diesen Tag. So have nice gentle accents on D and Tag. And Christ very quick. 1, 2, 3, go.
Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag.
Good, with the sopranos just before, bar before, and 1.
Christen,
Christen, ätzet diesen Tag.
I think, can you combine the legato that you did with a little bit more articulate? Christen, so one gets a little bit more bounce to it. 1, 2, 3, go.
Christen, ätzet diesen Tag.
More and and
Christen, ätzet diesen Tag.
awesome.
In Metall,
Okay, can you just play the hemiola, please, before kommt und eilt? Whatty, yeah? And do.
Kommt und eilt mit mir zu Krieg, und erweist mit frohen Lippen euren Dank und eure Pflicht.
Yeah, careful of the word Pflicht. Do you get enough P in it? It mustn't be Pflicht, it's got to be Pflicht, pf, with a P, yeah? 6/5 G sharp, yeah? That's it. 1, 2, 3.
Euren Dank und eure Pflicht.
Once again, eure Dank und eure Pflicht. Pflicht, Pflicht, Pflicht.
He wants you to be as good as you can be yourself. He doesn't want you to do it as some conductors would, exactly what they want, what the conductor wants. He wants you, and this sometimes can seem condescending, and we sometimes are furious at this sort of imposition of weight of expectation on us. It sometimes seems unjust, but in the end, it's moral, a bit like one's girlfriend sort of saying that, I don't want you to do what I say, I want you to be yourself, but be yourself as well as you can. And this is why it's always so exhausting, because if you let yourself down, you let him down, and if you let him down, you let yourself down.
Kommt und eilt mit mir zu Krieg, und erweist mit frohen Lippen euren Dank und eure Pflicht.
Here we go, basses. 1, 2,
Wenn der Strahl
yeah, okay. Look, this word Strahl, he does it in two ways. He does it one with a long melisma, doesn't he? Then der Strahl. So you get the ray of light actually showing with its comet behind it, as it were, all the way through. Then suddenly he does pops one out to den der Strahl. It's got to really buzz out that, the octaves in the sopranos and then the tenors, well, all the voices. So make that shorten with a sforzando, yeah? Bass is den der Strahl. There's a sort of dun rush. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. 1 and 2 and den. Crescendo. Could you all crescendo on after da 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 da? Also da einbricht. Really go crescendo through to da einbricht.
The big paradox is that Bach's music actually, for all its provincial origins, has more universal appeal than arguably any other composer. And that includes the great names like Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky. And why is that? Well, I think the more I delve into Bach's music and the more I live with it, and I've known parts, segments of Bach's music ever since my childhood, I think that there's something to do with the fact that he, more than any other composer, seems to combine what I would regard as a sort of the physical, earthy, with the metaphysical and the spiritual. The intellectual foundation of his art is as strong as the sensual and almost euphoric side of his musical output. And it's these two things coming together, the intellectual and the sensual, the ecstasy and the rigor, which I think make him particularly attractive. And I don't think it's any accident that his music, more than any other composer except possibly Vivaldi, can be swung, can be danced to, can be rocked, can be jazzed, can be boogied to.
Okay, now look at the last chorus. which is an amazing piece. It starts off with a huge, great fanfare with all the trumpets and drums, and then goes into a romp, a sort of scherzo romp. And then you come back, a sort of modified version of the brass fanfare. Höchster Herrscher in Gnaden an. Yep. Just go literally from the bar they come in. Could you give the C major? Yeah. Okay. So it's in 4. Here we go. 1 and. Yeah. Really solid sort of. Höchster Herrscher in Gnaden an. Look mercifully, O highest, thou on high. Yeah. And.
Lass den Dank, den wir dir bringen, angenehmer vor dir klingen.
No, that sounds to me like a morning service. I get, lass dir danken, den wir, that's all fine, and then angenehmer for, I can just hear the choir saying, I want that legato. It sounds awful. It's got to be angenehmer for, it's still got to have the scansion. Please don't make it sound like hymns ancient and modern or worse. More swagger, more buoyancy. No, could you have the, excuse me, can you have the L ready so it's lass? It's a real gesture, yeah? 1.
Lass den Dank, den wir dir bringen, angenehmer vor dir klingen. Lass uns stets in Segen.
That's much better. Go on.
Lass den Dank, den wir dir bringen, angenehmer vor dir klingen. Lass uns stets in Segen gehen.
Yeah, a shake there too, sopranos. Stets in Segen gehen. A quick shake and trill on the C sharp, yeah?
When you look at the instrumental treatises of the day, they're all based on imitation of the human voice. So they are asking flutes, oboes, violins to imitate the singing voice. Now, the singing voice is something, of course, that we still can reproduce naturally. We have it. But are we reproducing it in the same way that Bach did it? That is the question. We know, for instance, that the composition of his choir is very different in terms of gender and in terms of age from our own choir and also our own possibilities, because boys' voices broke much later in Germany in the 18th century. But not only did he have boys whose voices broke later, but of course there were no women, because the church forbade the use of women's voices right up until the 19th century. I mean, even Verdi, when he was doing his Requiem in Milan for the first time in the 1860s, was not allowed to use women, or if he could use women, they had to be put behind a grill and to wear a beekeeper's hat with a veil so that they couldn't be seen. Absurd, really, but that's the way it was.
And yeah, but the brilliant thing is actually the fact that you're singing together after the fugue here, that everything moves together, and it's got to be a collective statement of debunking the devil at that moment. Could you just give us the dominant 7th chord there where they come in? 64. Lass es, here we go. 2 and 3 and.
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen.
Stop. Just pronounce those words in rhythm, could you?
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen.
Say it and.
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen.
No, but she does an inflection. She goes, niemals nicht geschehen, not niemals nicht geschehen. It's not a sack of potatoes on every note. Say it again, please, Constanze.
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen.
Say it.
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen.
And the next?
Dass uns Satan möge quälen.
Dass uns Satan möge quälen.
Dass uns Satan möge. Scansion, long, short, yeah. Dass uns and.
Dass uns Satan möge quälen.
Yeah, that amount. Let's sing it, please. Lass es nie. Forte, really forte, yeah? And.
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen.
first thing to do is you must look him in the eye always, because if you're not looking him in the eye, whether you're doing it well or not, you're not being convincing. It's not working. So you need to sort of stand up there and really look at him, because after all, well, I mean, he is the conductor. But also that shows that you're not ashamed of what you're doing, and that you're completely in control of your phrasing and the text and everything, because if you had to look down too much, it shows you haven't done your work.
2 and 3 and... And you want a long quälen, don't you? KW?
Well, I think it can be more torturing, like
So quicker?
quälen, you know.
Quicker?
No, it's more that the vowel is still too friendly. It's still too quälen rather than quälen. You know, it is an ugly word, it's an ugly noise, and an ugly thing to be gequält, you know.
Well, hang on. We've got to be careful about choice of words here. It's triumphant at this moment. It's saying that to Satan. It's saying he can do what he likes, but, you know, ich stehe hier und singe.
Yeah.
In gar sichere Ruhe. That's what it really is. So it's a nirniki-nirno sound you're going to make there, aren't you? Lass das uns Satan möge quälen. You can shake what you like, old devil. So it's not too ernst. It's got to be done with a certain amount of knowingness. Yeah? Try again. And.
Lass es niemals nicht geschehen, dass uns Satans möge quälen.
Ich empfinde ganz stark, dass er spürt, dass Wörter nicht umsonst oder nicht zufällig die Klänge haben, die sie haben. Also zum Beispiel das Wort, es ging jetzt gerade ganz viel um das Wort quälen, dass der Satan die Seelen quält. Und natürlich ist quälen kein schöner Laut, weil es ist ja auch keine besonders schöne Erfahrung, gequält zu werden. Und wenn man weiß, was es bedeutet, dann verbietet sich eigentlich von vornherein, dass man sagt quälen oder einen wohligen Laut daraus macht. Dann wird von ganz alleine quälen daraus, und das ist eben genau, wie es sein soll und wie es klingen soll und ganz der richtige Laut für den Inhalt des Wortes.
And.
Da uns seine Huld erflieht und mit so viel Heil, dass man nicht nur danken kann, dass man nicht nur danken kann.
Non troppo forte per lui molto basso. Molto basso. On. Right.
Are we a little slower than we were? Because I'm finding the semi-quavers a bit kind of laboursome now. Perhaps just...
We can do it quicker. I think it's probably quite reasonable to do it slower for the moment, because it's a lot of to get through.
I feel as though I'm getting stuck on them rather.
No, I think it's all right.
It's all right.
Same place, yeah?
Can I just ask for...
Si.
Presumably you want a appoggiatura and trill at the end of 98.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the tam bam bam ba.
Yes, if you can. Dass man nicht genug danken kann. Dass man nicht genug in pairs, yeah?
Do you want more paired?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
Make it a bit more grappellification. Yeah? Give them 3 bars in, Morty. 89 and rum-deep.
Da uns seine Huld verflieht und mit so viel Heil, dass man nicht nur danken kann, dass man nicht nur danken kann.
Good.
Dass man nicht nur danken, dass man nicht nur danken kann, nicht nur danken kann, dass man nicht genug danken kann.
Yes, sì. Ma al fine, senza vibrato, danken kann, se no, danken kann.
Io credo che quando si prova col maestro Gardiner in particolare ci sia, ripeto, una sensazione di grande serenità, Il maestro Gardiner ha di bello una cosa, sa chiedere al cantante quello che lui cerca, nello stesso tempo lasciando il cantante libero di avere delle emozioni e quindi di mettere la voce a proprio agio. Io credo che il maestro Gardiner non sia alla ricerca di qualcosa di particolare. Mi piace lavorare con lui per questo, è molto chiaro, molto semplice, non è semplice ovviamente, però fa sembrare le cose facili.
Der Löw aus Davids Stamme ist erschienen, sein Bogen ist gespannt, das Schwert ist schon gewetzt, womit uns in
sorry.
Folge
I think that Recitativo, silent bar 7, means be free, much instead of der Löw auf David Stamm.
Right,
Der Löw aus David Stamm ist erschienen.
Good.
Yeah?
I hoped you'd say that.
And the tempo only applies to the cello. You go, sein Bogen ist gespannt.
Oh, good.
Das Schwert ist schon gewiss.
Oh, good. Right.
Absolutely. Then maybe the last penultimate bar, you better be in time. Otherwise.
Yes.
Okay. Der Löw.
Where are we going from?
Der Löw aus David.
Der Löw aus Davids Stamme ist erschienen, sein Bogen ist gespannt, das Schwert ist schon gewetzt, womit uns in Folge Freiheit setzt.
Schon vor 11 Jahren war es schon klar, dass John Eliot Gardiner eine viel präzisere Vorstellung davon hatte, was er wollte. Das grenzte manchmal natürlich an, ja nicht Diktatur, aber das war sehr autokratisch. Und es kann sein, ich habe den Eindruck diesmal, also nach 11 Jahren, dass er sich irgendwie, er steht etwas sanfter dem gegenüber. Also er ist noch sehr präzise und weiß genau, was er will, aber ist irgendwie flexibler geworden. Das ist mir auch ganz recht, denn ich glaube, ich bin ja auch in den letzten 11 Jahren auch flexibler geworden.
1, 2, 3. 2, 3. Go back to the E natural, bottom E natural, could you? 1, 2, 3, C natural. Stop on the C, E. Good. Could you go from the top? D, 1, 2, 3. Once again, please. Could we do long bows and slower? 1 and 2 and 3 and on and. Good. It's better. Okay, 77. Yeah, a tempo. Or 76, better still. And.
So, what is this cantata? Well, it has no arias, it has no chorales, which is most unusual. It's arranged symmetrically with flanking choruses, opening and closing, and then coming in from the outsides, you've got accompagnati, in other words, recitatives that are couched rather like opera ariosos, with, in the first case, strings holding through the tones, and in the last case, detached chords marking the beat by the whole wind ensemble as well as the strings. And then you have two duets coming in a little bit closer towards the center, and right at the center you have a recitative. So it's arranged in a chiastic structure, which is again characteristic of Bach at all different periods of his life, but particularly at this time. One thinks of, for instance, the chiastic structure of Christ lag in Todesbanden, Cantata 4, which was written a few years before. The symmetry, which is not simply of Pythagorean satisfaction, is there also, I think, to enable the listener to follow the thought better, the thought process. It has a satisfaction and a naturalness which is attractive as well as functional.
lovely, you know, if bar 6, if the third beat of bar 6 was very strong, and then a little bit of diminuendo to the downbeat of 7, including trumpets, Mark, downbeat of 7 less, and then really crescendo to the end of that, yeah? So 7 is a weak bar, beginning of it, yeah? It sounds a little bit rushed, that still, the trumpets, once again. The opening
chance of rehearsing that?
Yeah, sure.
Right, just even going round would be...
Sure, okay.
You get one chance and that's it, for another 30 bars.
This particular cantata is extremely demanding for trumpet. And what you've caught on camera, the first rehearsal of a project, so we've all been looking at the music. And of course we have slightly different ideas. So we come together, and there's only one man's ideas really that count. So we have to adapt what we've been working on to how he wants it. And we also have a little clash of opinions sometimes, which is healthy.
Look, Bach trumpets are a breed apart. He writes for the trumpet in a very virtuoso way. They require very, very special lips in order to play at that altitude, at that tessitura. They have to be virtuoso. And in my view, they have to also to encapsulate the dance quality, the swinging quality, because if they're played in a very stiff, rigid way, the brilliance is lost. It becomes something then appliqué, stuck on, whereas if the brilliance comes from an internalized, almost sort of visceral dance motif, then we gain the ecstasy and the euphoria which is innate in Bach's music.
Again, 1 and 2 and run. That's good, good. Again, 1 and 2, John. Yeah. Super, lovely, great. From the top, super, that's great. Terrific.
So it opens with this incredibly joyous chorale, this joyous chorus, I should say, but a chorus which actually begins with an incredibly festive instrumental ritornello, where the orchestra is used in typical Bach fashion, in a way that we later encounter in the Gloria from the H-Moll Mess, in the B minor Mass, with 3 families of instruments interlocking in a fugal way. You have the wind band, the reeds, the oboes and bassoon. You have the trumpets with their incredibly sort of ecstatic, euphoric characteristics, and you have the string band. And the task here is to balance them in a way that the trumpets don't overpower the others, but reinforce, as it were, the overall effect. And it's in triple rhythm. It's a dance. It's like a jig, and the choir come in with enormous sort of joy and elation. Christen diesen Tag in Metall und Marmorstein. And in typical Bach fashion, he varies the beat. It's basically 1 and a bar, but then suddenly he brings 2 bars together for a hemiola, so that the meter changes, and you get this delightful feeling of 3 against 2.
Trumpets, if you can start the first semis weaker, so they go ya da 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 dee da 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 dee da. And not too short, the semi-quaver on the quavers on the second and third beat. Okay, once again, oboes really lead this. Possible, you know, this tempo, you have to be very agile and nimble to do it. And if everybody sings a little bit more lightly, and on the dum-ta, da-da-da-da-dum-ta, making a little swell and then back off so that the da-da-da-da-dum comes a da-da-da-da-dum. Yeah? Got to be nimbler, everybody. But let's never bite at the quavers. Let them never be da da da. So da di di da da dum da dum. Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag. Always graceful. Once again, please. Yep. I thought that Da Capo had real schwung.
If you're choosing to perform Bach with reconstructions of, or originals where they exist, of the instruments that he would have used, the things that you have are two things. Number one, you have a much more perilous, more dangerous, accident-prone style of playing, because technologically these instruments are nothing like as secure or as evolved as their modern counterparts. That's the first thing. That's the negative side. But on the positive side, the thing that you gain is this potential for lightness of articulation and a dance quality. The instrumental resources, as they evolved in the course of the late 18th century, all through the 19th century, into the 20th century, was towards not only greater security of technical execution, but greater volume and greater brilliance on the surface anyway, surface brilliance. What we've lost from that is this specific color and lightness, and that's what we're trying to reconstruct in our orchestra.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Nota bene. Bei einer andächtigen Musik ist allezeit Gott mit seiner Gnaden Gegenwart. Now, I find that very, very significant, that he's saying wherever there's devotional music, God with his grace is present, which from a strict theological point of view is probably heresy, heretical, because it's saying that music has an equivalent potency to the Word of God. And I think that, in essence, is why Bach is so attractive to us today, because he is saying that the very act of music making, of coming together, is, in a sense, an act which invokes the latency, the potency, the potentiality of God's grace, however you like to define God's grace, but of a benediction that comes even in a dreadful, overheated studio like Abbey Road, where far too many microphones and there's much too much Verkehr, much too much stuff hin und her in the studio itself, that if one, as a musician, puts oneself in the right frame of mind, then God's grace can actually come and direct and influence the way we perform his music.
Gott, du hast es wohl gefüget. Gott, du hast es wohl gefüget. Was uns jetzt so widerfällt, was uns jetzt so widerfällt. Gott, du hast es wohl gefüget. Du hast es wohl gefüget. Was uns jetzt so widerfällt. Gott, du hast es wohl gefüget. Was uns jetzt so widerfällt. Lasst uns auf ihn stets trauen und auf seine Gnade bauen. Denn hat uns dies beschert, denn hat uns dies beschert, denn hat uns dies beschert. Was uns ewig nun vergnüget, was uns ewig nun vergnüget,
I count myself very fortunate to have grown up in a family of musicians who weren't professional musicians, but where singing was very much part of the way of life. And my parents had a particular love of German music, particularly of Heinrich Schütz and of Johann Sebastian Bach, so that as a treble, I was able to learn all the Bach motetten auswendig, completely by heart. I feel that having had that privileged background of knowing his music early on, but not in a church context, always in a secular context and in a family context, that it's made me have a deep affection for this music of Bach, and also it makes me feel that his music is still, to a large extent, misrepresented and misinterpreted, because when it's done in a very strict German church context, often the joy of the music, the dance quality of the music, the elation, the wit, the humor of the music just is out the window, and it becomes serious evangelische, protestantische Musik, and it lacks Freude, and Bach, above all, is a composer. Yes, Leidenschaft, yes, passion, yes, deep emotions are there, but also this, in Christen, ätzet, diesen Tag, it's pure joy, it's ecstasy.
Bit more positive from the continuo, please. Yeah.
Ruft und fleht den Himmel an, Gott und Christen kommt zum Rhein, ruft und fleht den Himmel an, Gott und Christen kommt zum Rhein, kommt die Christen, kommt zum Rhein.
Yeah.
In the background all the time is, of course, the 18th century concept of the doctrine of the affects, the idea that there's a codified range of different emotions and different sentiments which each musician is expected to grasp, to sense and to feel, and then to transmit through his instrument or through his or her voice. That's a very basic concept, and it's something that I train the singers to do, and it's something that they are virtually proficient in without one having to labor every point. They understand through their technique what type of effect is required at any given moment.
Verdoppelt euch die Macht, ihr heißen Andachtsflammen, und schlagt in dem und bringst täglich zusammen.
Jetzt ganz frei.
Steigt friedlich Himmel an und danket Gott, wo dies
Ja,
passiert.
das wird ganz gut. Er steigt fröhlich Himmel an, forte, und dann und danke Gott. Lebendiger und elastischer, ja? Rhythmisch. Okay, ein bisschen zügiger da, ja? Once again, please, everybody. Ja.
Verdoppelt euch die Macht, ihr heißen Andachtsflammen, und schlagt in den und bringst täglich zusammen.
Mehr schüttelnd, also steigt fröhlich, wirklich, ja.
Steigt friedlich Himmel an und danket Gott für dies, was wir getan. Und danket Gott für dies, was wir getan. Und danket Gott für dies, was wir getan.
Well, I'd just like to talk a little bit about some of the music. I mean, for instance, the Schlusschor is so unusual in Bach's whole output, because on the one hand it starts with a sort of fanfare for the trumpets and the drums that sounds like a sort of the Stadtpfeife of Halle, sort of coming into the Marktplatz, as it were, and announcing either the election of the new Bürgermeister or something like that. It's prachtful. It's very outward and extrovert music. And then, in typical Bach fashion, he's a composer of such fantasy and such humor, he brings in the choir of woodwinds and the strings in something that's much, much more crisp and scherzo-like and frech, really. It's something completely taking all the dust out of the wigs, out of the perruque of the town council, as it were. And then you have this wonderful soaring, with great waves of sound in the oboe and the violins. And then, interesting enough, he makes the trumpets, and that's what's hard, to have to not go back to the pompous style, but to imitate what they've just heard in the wind. So, it's very, very hard for the trumpets to tongue that really accurately. And this builds up such a kaleidoscope of colors and different feeling of bustle and of movement, so that when the chorus comes in, höchste Schau in Gnaden an, it's a sort of clamorous multitude of people saying, look down, O mighty one, on our state here on earth. So but there's a feeling of exuberance and exhilaration, and also a prayer being not something internalized, but being actually a public demand, as it were. I mean, this is music of somebody who was a very menschlich, a very human person, somebody who wasn't a stiff. And I mean, if you look at, I don't know whether you can focus on this, but if you look at this portrait here, I mean, this is the famous Hausmann portrait. And you look, the top half, it's very much the Thomas Cantor, and you can see the peruke, and he's very, very stiff and very much the intellectual and the schoolmaster. But then you look at the bottom half, look at that, look at the lips and the jaw and the nose. It's much more, without the eyes and without the peruke, it's much more human, it's much more sympathetic, it's much more, I don't know, you can feel that the man has humor. And I grew up under this portrait because this is a replica, but all during the war in my parents' house, the original portrait hung in our house all through the war for safekeeping because of the war. And I grew up under that stern gaze.
Magic. What a beautiful piece. Great.
Well, I'm not sure what to do tomorrow if it's still really painful. By the time I've sat in casualty for 5 weeks.